Our conference has been an attempt to rethink refugee studies. The Refugee Studies Centre has been around for 35 years, and yet the world has changed dramatically, particularly in the last couple of years, with the European refugee crisis, with the rise of populist nationalism, with the recognition of protracted refugee situations around the world. And so as academics and researchers, we wanted to come together to think about what refugee studies should look like in the 21st century. And to do that, we wanted not only to have a side conversation with academics in a university, but to invite researchers from around the world and policymakers from international organisations, NGOs, businesses, even journalists, artists and refugees themselves.
The main highlight I found in this conference is bridging the gap between different disciplines such as policymakers, academics and professionals, which is very crucial to look at the refugee crisis at the time being.
I think I'll take away the importance of interdisciplinary approach to the study of refugees and refugee politics and the interaction between states and private actors in dealing with the refugee crisis and response to refugee crisis.
I'll be taking away a sense of optimism at a period of what I would call great darkness in the world about the ways in which we are responding to refugee crisis. And the optimism comes from the commitment, intellect, and creativity that I hear and see amongst the participants today.
So I think it's very important to reflect and to propose new solutions to this phenomenon, because it's accelerating and it will be very damaging for the global regime of refugee protection in the future.
Well, I'll be taking away the fact that there's a lot of important work being done particularly by vibrant young scholars who are getting into a field that requires some basic rethinking.
I have been absolutely impressed with the quality of each and every panel and each speaker that I have heard. I've also really appreciated the blend of scholars from different stages of seniority, from PhD students through to senior scholars, as well as the important contributions made by people coming from civil society who are lending their insights and experience in really thoughtful ways.
I find it useful to shift the research from theory and desktop studies into practical contexts, so how we can reflect our academic skills and research focus into something practical for people to understand and for people to apply in practice.
Well, I think in every panel that I've attended, there have been two things. One is the empirical work that's been done. A lot of people have done field research and they brought those results back, and I learned a lot of things I didn't know. And then secondly, people are thinking about new categories, new ideas, new ways of approaching some questions we've been asking for a long time.
Some of the sessions that I appreciated the most were the ones that focused on trying to better understand the concepts of solidarity and responsibility sharing. There were sessions that really tried to look at what the content of those terms were, and that's quite important as we look towards the global compacts on migration and refugees.
It's always very interesting to come to these events because you have the chance to hear people who really focus in depth on these issues, and we as practitioners have less time to really observe the situation and reflect on really what's happening and what impact those policies have, which is really, I think, fascinating.
I think we have to grapple with governments and practices that are contrary to our expectations simply getting worse over time. The myth of progress has been challenged, I think, in the last many years. It seems like situations for refugees, far from improving, are deteriorating, and in part that is through the resurgence of xenophobia, bigotry, fear. The sorts of attitudes that we had thought might be waning are in fact on the increase.
It's very important for humanitarian actors to really take away the new trends in mobility and displacement that we're seeing, and to think really how can we as humanitarian actors do better in addressing the vulnerability associated with refugee flows and migratory flows, and how can we advocate better for better protection, for better assistance, and for state practices that will protect rather than deter.
the refugee situation globally has changed so much and it has become such a contentious political issue that it is fundamental to provide academic knowledge that is valuable and useful to tackle that kind of situation.
Look, the world is in a situation of the largest number of displaced people in many, many years. We see the closing of borders to people who are fleeing harm. We see mistreatment of people who've been able to gain asylum elsewhere. So we're dealing with a situation of violations of human rights and inability of the world to protect people who need help. And scholars have a role to play in understanding that, in critiquing the current situation, and in proposing better solutions to improve people's lives.